Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second season of the Fine Peas podcast, the long-awaited second season. Thanks to everyone who sent in an email, who DM'd me on social media asking me about the second season. This is it. My name is James Razile, once again hosting the Fine Peas podcast for you all. To kick things off, I thought, what better way than to go to music? Everyone has an appreciation, a love for music. Not everyone likes the same style of music, the same type of music, but everybody that I know appreciates music to some degree anyway. So I thought, what better way to kick things off than to talk to Din from the band F-105. He is an artist and a Star Wars geek. We're going to get into that, talking school, keeping promises to our mothers, and the pretentiousness of having one name. He is, as we'll talk about, just Din. So here it is, my conversation with Din from the band F-105. Joining me now is Din. Just Din. Is that correct? Just Din?
I thought you were going to say Din just in. But yeah, Din just Din. Yeah, pretentiously just one word.
Why did you decide to go with one name?
First of all, I think it's fun. If I'm going to be really honest now, just thinking back to 2000, actually it was 2001 when I decided that, it was that I felt like music had become too serious, and I missed the time when rock stars acted like rock stars and they had pretentious one name names and they did things that were fun and colorful. So maybe it was mostly that. And I because at the time when I decided to really pursue music with my career, which was 2001, that's when bands that I loved were hitting, like Arcade Fire. And that whole sort of acoustic folk rock movement with violins and banjos, and even though I loved bands like Arcade Fire and all that stuff that was coming out, I still felt it was a little dry, a little beige, a little serious, and I wanted to be just kind of ridiculous with a one name that essentially means noise. You know, the din of the room, or din of like right now in my room, I can hear my fan, and I can hear Caravana outside because I live close to the X, and it's the din of the room.
So are you going to eventually just go to a symbol? Are you going to change your name to a symbol at any point, or do you think Din is fine? You're going to stick with Din?
Oh, dude. I think I could be that pretentious. Yeah. But I mean, honestly, I say that because, I also think that, humility and maybe a little bit of fun self-deprecation in rock and roll is healthy, because it's ridiculous. It's rock and roll. I make rock music, It's I sing about some serious stuff sometimes, but man, it's really meant to just roll. It's meant to be fun.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I always want to keep that in mind. Maybe because I have a tendency to be a serious person, but the funny thing is that a review of the F-105 album came out today, and one of the things reviewers said was my lyrics were sometimes fun and sometimes serious, and sometimes rebellious, sometimes reflective. So the name Din also had a double meaning at the time, 2001, which was, I was really affected by September 11th, and because I had always liked artists like Marley and even U2, The Clash, I felt affected by September 11, and I became an activist at the time, and I even traveled to places like New York doing activism, or Native reserves 20 hours away in Canada, blockades, and I realized that Din also meant basically faith, truth, faith in Arabic. So it's used a lot in the Muslim world. So like Saladin is two words, almost like Allah and then Din. Aladdin, So I don't know. The post September 11 world, I thought Din kind of having that push buttons, maybe, because I was trying to sing about things that I felt were needed to be sung about in terms of how the Western world was responding with violence and all that. And really, like, I'm going off on major tangents here, James, but at the time, that's when the world became, under W. Bush, you're either with us or you're with the terrorists. And I don't want to get too political, but in terms of being an artist, you have to respond to that, like what's being put in the collective consciousness. The collective consciousness in the West is now thinking in terms of us and them. So overnight, and you could feel that at the time. I mean, if anyone left a bag on the subway, people wouldn't go near it because they would think it could be a terrorist bomb. I mean, do you remember that when the fear was crazy after 9/11?
No, 2001. The world changed for everybody. But it's interesting that you took the name from that, because we spoke earlier, and you told me that you are a spiritual person to a point, right?
Well, essentially, I think, in all clarity, I think that all the spiritualities and religions and true mystics throughout time, and even in the world right now, and scientists are now backing it up, say that everything is one. And science now is saying that all matter and everything is one, and energy just changes form, and matter can't be uncreated. So simply put, if that makes me a spiritual person, where I think heaven and earth and all energy and all people and all time and everything's one and connected, then yeah, then I'm a spiritual person that way. I used to be religious, but not anymore, because I found that my Christian religion most of the time was doing things that were against oneness, against unity, against love. So I had to leave that.
But you found your own inner peace, inner love, inner unity to go. But let's go back to 2001, because 2001 was a big year for you personally. In 2001, you graduated, and some other things picked up steam. So why don't you take me back to 2001, Din?
2001 was the start of the Souls, and I knew that I would be doing music full time as soon as I graduated the Ontario College of Art and Design, and I went there because it was important to my family, my mom most specifically, that I get an education and I finish it. And for some reason, I felt strongly about honoring that to her.
I think that's important, though. A lot of, I think one thing that's missed with a lot of people now, a lot of mindsets, is when you start something, there's something to be said for finishing what you've started. In a lot of ways, like, okay, you go get into something and it might not be for you, but maybe just stick with it, see it to the end. I think that's something that we're losing out, I think, as a society as a whole.
In a quick fix society, of course it is. And at the time, I had a gut feeling that not only was I kind of doing this for my mom, but I was doing it for me, because you read my mind. I said to myself, if I can finish this, then I give myself complete freedom on the day I finish to say, I did that and I finished it, and now I'm going to do music. But also, once I start music, I'm going to know how to finish it. Like Socrates said, all knowledge is self-knowledge, right? And that's what he meant. By going to OCAD, I learned about me, which is I was someone that could start and finish something.
For people listening that don't know what OCAD is, can you just explain it to them?
OCAD would be I think Canada's, I don't know, for lack of a better word, premier or main art college. And then on the West Coast, you have Emily Carr. But OCAD was started by members of the Group of Seven, which are basically the first Canadian painters to get famous who painted the Canadian landscapes. And it's just a really forward-thinking school. All my teachers were cutting-edge artists in their own right, or known throughout the world, and diverse. They were women, they were men, they were Asian, they were Black, they were Native. I had a Native teacher who was Robert Wool, who's a famous Canadian visual artist, concept artist, who taught me, and he's actually the one who he single-handedly awakened my love of our native brothers and sisters in Canada, and what it means to be living in this colonial context with them. But 2001, so I started the school in, what was it, 1997, around the time we started hearing news of the Phantom Menace. And yeah, so I finished OCAD in 2001 in July. It's funny because I had all my art in storage recently. Well, once I sort of graduated, I just put it all in storage and forgot about it, and now I'm going to do music, and that's what I've done since August 2001. But I all these years I thought I'd lost my diploma, and I just found it and it said July 2001. So I pretty much started music right after, and then I got this job handed to me by an activist friend who wanted to leave. She was graphic designer at a social justice, national faith and social justice newspaper. So I got this job that started in August, and working for this faith and social justice newspaper. And our editor, Ted, he became, basically my Gandalf in activism and faith. And he had been a mainstay in Canadian sort of faith-based activism all his life. Now as an elder, the 6 years I spent there, he mentored. I think a lot of my lyric writing came from studying people like Bob Marley, John Lennon, and Joe Strummer, but Marvin Gaye. But then it came from Ted and working at this newspaper. But I started this newspaper at this job, and then a few weeks later, September 11th happened. I still remember that bus ride to work that morning and thinking everything was hunky-dory, and then getting into work. And my first experience was seeing crazy news on the internet, was watching the towers fall. And luckily I had this mentor who really, I think, he was a Christian, and I think he really instilled in me from that moment on, like that whole like biblical Jesus idea of like, be not afraid. I don't know, something about his mentorship intellectually taught me. And he was big into music, so we listened to music nonstop. People like Bruce Cockburn, who were also faith and justice orientated in their lyrics. A Canadian, Bruce Cockburn. And I don't know, Ted I was lucky to have Ted, because he showed me how to not have fear when September 11th happened, and how to use our minds and our hearts to wade through that mess that was being thrown at us from Bush and Fox News and all that hate propaganda, and like how to overcome that fear. They were trying to condition us with fear at that time. Yeah, Din. So it was like I just chose Din hoping that would push buttons, but I didn't go looking for the name. Just to come full circle, there's I'm half Greek, and there's a convenience store near where I lived, and the Greek guys. You ever seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding? Wonderful movie. The Greek people always like, Greek this and Greek that, and this word comes from Greek, and that food is Greek. So this guy was like, your name, Din, there's no D in Greece. It's a TH. It's like, and there's no EA. It's Din. And for some reason, a light just went on at that moment, and I saw myself sort of signing my paintings DIN, or because instantly I was like, noise, faith, Greek, Din. So yeah. You graduate, September 11th happens,
but you start your band, the Traveling Souls, at that point. Were any of the tracks, were any of the inspirations for the Traveling Souls and the material that you were going to come up with, did they have to do with September 11th in any way, or did they have to do with maybe something that you learned through your experience at OCAD? And the thing with OCAD is you can't just be a slouch and get into OCAD. You have to have real talent to be there, and you actually have real talent in the artistic front. You are a very, very talented artist. Something I just discovered, it was a few months ago. You just started posting stuff on your social media pages, and I was like, whoa, he's got, like, this is real talent. Like, this isn't just me doodling Donald Duck on a piece of paper. This is like, you can actually do this. I was really impressed with a lot of it. So I just wondering, like, going back to September 11th, did that influence anything that of the Traveling Souls material?
What a great question. I'm really glad you asked that, because I started writing a song immediately after September 11th, which was called Where We All Go. And in my mind, I had a ridiculous idea that I was going to write my own version of Where the Streets Have No Name, because I always loved that as a statement about what heaven was, or the oneness of maybe people in a heavenly realm. But I wanted to write what that meant in a post-September 11th world, and maybe how the religiousness of that song, Where the Streets Have No Name, and the Joshua Tree, because Bono is very obviously open about how he comes from a very Christian perspective. I wanted to write something that was maybe a little more spiritual and less religious, but essentially be kind of like an homage and an updated version of Where the Streets Have No Name, and make the lyrics based a little more on what the most cutting-edge modern spiritual writers, how they're saying those same things that maybe Bono was talking about. So I started writing those lyrics then. I mean, because September 11th made us all kind of realize this us and them mentality was everywhere, and you had Muslims killing in the name of Allah, and then you had a Christian like George W. Bush killing in the name of Christianity and democracy. Like, he wasn't hiding the fact that he felt like he was doing sort of God helped him, to get to where he was. And so I felt like we needed to do away with this religious stuff as artists and start trying to write what I felt the new spiritual writers in the world, like Eckhart Tolle, Neil Donald Walsh, Alan Watts, people like that were saying, Joseph Campbell, were saying that, like, the new cultural myth, the artists need to not fall into the habits of the old cultural myths, and they need to write the new ones. And the new ones really need to be how we're unified on this globalized world that we can all see now from images from space. So Where We All Go, I could look at every lyric in that song, and it's simultaneously referencing Where the Streets Have No Name, yet the most modern spiritual writers. Like the first couple of lines were, if the sky explodes, where will you go? There's nowhere to run when sand and star are one. And that's really echoing Where the Streets Have No Name. Like, I want to run, I want to hide, using the run symbology. But then it's saying that we're all creatures and we're all energy from this Big Bang thing. So the sky explodes, where will you go? There's nowhere to run, sand and star are one. So really, everything that happened after this explosion is all this energy that's really part of that, and we're all just individuations and connected in this energy. So lyrically, I think I was on from the start, but musically in 2001, I was not there. I was just developing, nor were the people I was playing with, which at the time was Mike and Frank from high school, who saw me at an open mic a few months earlier, and I said, hey, why don't you join the band? We didn't have the Traveling Souls name yet, which Frank eventually gave to us about a half year later, but it took 16 years to make that song right, and the rest of the album that I heard in my head at September 11th about this oneness instead of division, and that was the Soul, Sand, and the Sun, 2016. So having got there in 2016, that was really, I guess, to come full circle again. That was what I felt I knew I could do after completing OCAD, which was like to run the long race and finish it, no matter how long it took.
So it took 15 years for Sand in the Sun, the Souls album.
That album, which I felt I wanted to make or at least artistically, not in any sort of popular way, but in a response to what the Joshua Tree was to me, which was a spiritual yet political album. And so Where We All Go, Sand in the Sun, especially Where We All Go, I started writing that like a month after September 11th and tried to record it over the years. But all those songs, that mature sound, that big epicness, the poetry, the musicianship, I thought arrogantly, probably at the time, that we could get there in a matter of a few years. But yeah, it took 15 or 16 years.
There's some really, really fine tracks there. Where We All Go, Sand in the Sun are fantastic. What? But you lost the name Traveler in the Souls. It was the Traveling Souls when you first started in 2001. Why'd you drop Traveling?
Frankie suggested, I don't know where he didn't pull it out of he pulled it out of the top of his head at a band rehearsal one day. Frankie was, who played drums with the Souls for the first 3 years. He said Traveling Souls, and for some reason that resonated with all three of us, but I didn't like the SOULS, the part. And I do love shoes. I do love walking. So I just suggested we be Traveling Souls, like SOLES. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know how long it took. I actually have a scrapbook I should get out while we're talking. I'm going to carry my computer over to my scrapbook so I could flip through it as we're talking to reference. But for some reason, one day I looked at the name and I thought the Souls would just be simpler and easier to say, quicker. I don't know, just felt right, more right than the Traveling Souls, just the Souls. I just liked it's something that happened with F-105. Like the F and the 5, basically the words start with F, right? Mm-hmm. And they bookend the name. So there's a symmetry there. F-105. And the 1 and O are circles and O's. And I don't know, the soul is kind of the same. The S and the beginning and the S at the end. And then right in the middle was a dividing line, which was the L. And then the E and the O are both circles. So there's a real symmetry to, I don't know. I just looked at it and liked it. I'm looking at my scrapbook here because I have everything almost chronological. Traveling Souls at the Cathedral. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked.
So let's go to 2008. Mike and Frank have left the Souls to start, real lives, have families and whatnot. But you're sticking with the music thing. Like you said, you're going to put it through to the end. And in 2008, you were asked the question of whether you want to be famous or you want to have a career.
Mike and Frank left the Souls circa 2004. And no, five. And 2006, I gave my notice into the newspaper that I was now working at full time as they moved me up to production manager, and I was writing and doing the art, and it was a good job, and I was paid well. And stupid me, I gave him notice that I'm leaving in a few months. I gotta really do music full time, or my life's gonna pass me by. I was still doing music hard, but I was like, I need to not work full time, or I'll never have enough time to do music. So that was really almost really dumb of me because it was such a good job. And it was run out of a school, so when the school closed in the summer, I had summers off that were paid that I could tour and travel with. So it was really actually a good job for a musician. But then the paper folded, so I didn't have to quit. It folded only a month after that, and I got a severance package, and that was really I look back at it and just the universe working, everything in harmony. I think when you follow your bliss, like Joseph Campbell says, things fall into place. So that was definitely a big example of that, because instead of having to quit and not getting any severance, the paper folded and there was a package, and I moved to Parkdale, which is where I found the cheapest rent, because I was going to need that now going into this music thing. Park I didn't know, but at the time was the art mecca of Toronto. It's starting to not be that. It's starting to get gentrified now, and it's driving me nuts. But any given day of the night, I could play a venue or an open mic. So when I moved here in 2000, I started playing 3 to 6 times a week, and I tried to be really disciplined about that. And at one of those shows, two years later, after 2 years of it, and I had started to find something on my own without Frank and Mike. I didn't know if I was going to continue the Souls. I was just out playing as Din. And at one open mic in the area near Parkdale, I met Mark, who he's a tall guy. He's got a great Ron Burgundy type voice. So he's also a musician. He played that night. He's a real presence. It was hard not to notice him. And I remember thinking, this is kind of funny because I heard him talking. I remember thinking, boy, does this guy think he knows a lot. Because there's something like truly Ron Burgundy about him, which is very confident. And so he came up to me and he said, hey, man, I liked your performance. And I said, oh, thanks. And he said, well, let me ask you something. Now, maybe I can help you. But I got a question. Do you want to be famous or do you want a career? Or would you rather be famous or would you rather have a career? And I felt over the years the temptation to fame, but at that point I had already gotten to the point where, not already, it took a long time, where I did realize that I loved the art more than anything. That I just really wanted to make this art that I really believed in, and fame really meant nothing. And so I said, I want a career if that'll help me make more art. He said, okay, then I'll teach you that, but you have to do everything I say. And he was serious.
Who was he at that point to you, though? Was he just somebody randomly in the bar?
Yeah, but I could tell by the way he carried himself and the way other musicians who, like, his performance was very professional and really good, and he was hanging out with everyone who was already established. Sort of, because a lot of people who do have careers in music do still, sometimes frequent the open mic scene to work out things, and it's a community where you meet like I've met some famous people at open mics, or people that are real like Juno winning, like real mainstays in the Canadian scene. And anyway, I knew that he was the real deal. Just I could sort of get a sense of it. And I didn't find that out until hanging out with him for a while after, just how much. But it was funny because he was like, "Okay, well, you have to do everything I say, and I'll teach you." I was like, "Who is this arrogant guy?" But I had a meeting with him, and I started doing everything he said, like to the point of, it was like, we got together a week later. He's like, "You got to sell that amp, and here, take this amp." And he took me on the road to play some shows with him, and he gave me a better amp, which was because he was just teaching me the ins and outs of little things. Like I had this big amp, which was loud, but it was impractical to carry and tour with. And then he, gave me a smaller amp with Vox, which was better and easier to tour with. And he started teaching me about how to submit stuff to, how to apply to festivals, etc., etc., etc. And I literally, I think, probably for the next 5 years, did everything he said, without rebelling against it. That didn't come later until recently.
You meet him in 2008, then 2010 rolls by. Now, early on, you had a bit of radio play that charted in the top 10 with the Souls at Guelph U, and you did a little bit of like touring with them as well. But in 2010, the Winter Olympics struck Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and take us through that experience that you had with the Winter Games.
Yeah, so from 2001 to 2010, that's 10 years of, we did do some touring and a lot of live shows locally. And in 2008, when I met Mark, I started applying to festivals. And in the summer of 2010, I got invited to play as part of a sort of Mark variety performance that Mark was asked to organize. So this at the 2010 Winter Olympics in Victoria, and the venue on site was called Ontario Pavilion. So we were representing Ontario. So there was different big event tents. They were actually quite large with big sound systems, and we played that, and that was great. I remember when we got on the plane. This was before mobile boarding passes. Actually, I was so excited, I had printed out my boarding pass at the airport, and then I threw it in the garbage. And we had to find the right garbage that I threw it out in. So I haven't been living that down. I've been living that down ever since. But I cried. I started crying. The plane took off to the Olympics because it was like, wow, this is the first kind of real thing. It's been 10 years to get here. And with a lot of gratitude in my heart for Mark and his help. Yeah, so that was exciting. And then that was great to try in front of a bigger crowd and a bigger system out west, things that I'd been working on at open mics and workshopping, because that's really what the benefit of an open mic is. You can go and you can, to a small room, play few shows in a week or a whole ton in a year as you're writing, your next album. You could be testing out your songs and your show. So something that I've been testing out on a song, which was Sky in the Name of You off 2008 Souls record, You Burst Into Fire Again, was getting the crowd to sing back the OOs. So I did that in Vancouver, and everyone sang it back like really passionately. And we have that video online, so that was really great to see that something I had worked on in open mics, like just getting a little room of people to sing the OOs. Now I could get a big venue to do it. And then we went back to the hotel that night and really hungry because everything was closed near the hotel, and there was sausages left out on like the grill, breakfast grill, but the grill had been off. And Mark and my brother, who came out to meet us because he lived in BC, we were both hungry, and we went to eat the sausages, and Mark was like, "Don't do that, man, you're gonna get sick." But we still ate the damn sausages, and my brother and I both got so sick after that Olympic performance, we couldn't move out of bed for about a week. And then I had to fly home with it, and it was an ear infection. And in the ear infection, something happened when the jet was landing in Toronto and clogged my ear with water, and I lost my hearing for 6 months.
How does a musician live without without audio in his ear for 6 months?
That was a pretty tough 6 months. It was also just psychologically really, weird to go from such a high to such a low because of the damn sausages that were at the hotel at the Olympics. You're not thinking straight when you're touring. You kind of get nuts. That's one thing that all touring musicians know. You kind of go a little mental after about 2 days.
2010 though was another really, really big year for you because just south of Vancouver you had an opportunity. It was, I'm going to call this one the make or break. Can I call it make or break? Does that make sense?
Oh, this is that's no exaggeration. This was a make or break thing for me. So Seattle was a few months after the Winter Olympics. So that was actually the first literal manifestation of, again, this year, I had applied to, every year I applied to, the 100 or so or more, depending on what festivals are running, festivals across North America, some in Europe, some in Australia. So I applied to 100 festivals in 2010 approximately, and booked the Seattle Northwest Folklife Festival, which runs for about 4 or 5 days, which is actually the largest attended music festival in the U.S. We book a venue there called Vera Stage. It's a youth event. Vera Stage has gained some fame by being supported by people like Eddie Vedder, who's supporting, youth music in Seattle. So we're honored and just so excited to be booked to play this venue as part of this festival. There's my one acceptance out of 100. So we schedule a little tour around it. We play some dates around Vancouver Island. And the end of the tour is the show in Seattle. So we have to take the little tour van on a ferry. And the logistics of all this, flying and playing in Canada and the States and on an island and then in another country, the logistics are insane. And I'm acting tour manager, acting band manager. So this all my responsibility, and I usually do well, and it usually goes well, except for when I threw out my flight ticket. But that should have given me pause to maybe think that I wasn't as good as I thought I was, because as we're on the ferry going from Victoria to Washington, Seattle, the state that Seattle's in, I get a call from the festival, and I'm excited. We're on the ocean, and the festival organizer of that venue says, "How come you're not here? You're supposed to be on in 20 minutes."
Oh man.
And so 10 years, all that planning of this tour, I'm with my band, I'm with my brother, his friends, everyone's looking at me, and I have to say, oh, I thought we were on at 11 p.m., not 11 a.m.
Oh.
I don't know how I screwed up something that colossal.
Well, I think I think you would assume 11 p.m. though, wouldn't you?
You would. Now, I have an uncle who is in business philosophy, and he's part of some think tanks that study the way humans think, and he had actually years before that had showed me a hard truth, which was that in life, most of what you experience through your baggage, which is basically you see what you always have seen, or you see what you want to see. And the short of this point of why my uncle taught me this was when he saw me play music many, many years before, he said, "You didn't get the crowd," which that night I didn't, but I had by accident or just by gut instinct many times before, but I didn't know how to do it consciously yet. But he said, "You're not listening to the crowd. You can't, in business, which would be the same with art, you can't No one will pay or give you attention for something they don't want. That's just a fundamental human characteristic. He said, if you want to succeed as a musician, you have to figure out what those people want. And you have to do that. The only way you could do that is by really listening to them. Like, talk to people after the show, start researching, and you have to really listen to what's being said in detail. So how this relates to the time is that was me in the error of looking at the timesheet and just assuming, not really looking at the detail of the event. Of course, those are kind of two different extreme examples, but what I'm trying to say is I realized then and there I wasn't paying attention in life as well as I thought I was, because obviously I made this huge mistake. I assumed, like you said, anyone could or likely would, because when I saw my set said like 11 to 12:30 p.m., right? So you sort of see the PM, and I sort of, even though that was afternoon, I sort of saw the PM as attached to the 11, not the 12 in my mind.
Yeah, I can see how that mistake could be made. I can see that.
You know what I mean? So it was like if they typed 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., that would have helped me.
Yeah.
Rebel girl, rebel girl, rebel girl, they know you. It's gonna be your time for breaking through, for breaking through.
Your uncle's advice, though, rang true to later on, and you still live by that advice to this day. And you have embraced, you've opened your ears, you've listened to a community that you are very fond of, to a community that I'm very fond of, and that is the Star Wars community. You've been very successful in that world of fanboys
And girls, yeah. And I say girls because, that is really part of listening, and that's goes back to what my uncle was saying. Wait, now this community in the larger community is saying, you have to listen to us. And okay, I'm going to listen. I'm going to shut up now. And I'm going to really listen to what you've gone through over the years, what you're still going through. And Rebel Girl is a result of that. And I think because so many women and girls did embrace it in fandom, and guys too, I think maybe that means I was listening okay. But to go back to this moment on that ferry, my heart sank so much. I said to myself, I don't think I could go on. Not at the show, but I don't think I want to do music anymore. Like, I felt like such a failure, with everyone looking at me too, and all their hopes, like my bandmates, So what I did was I got back on the phone and I begged them to change our slot. Like, I said, I screwed up. You do not owe me anything, but please, for the love of God, I do not want to end I'm thinking about ending my music career. I need to somehow fight for this. Can you please just still let us play anywhere? One song, two songs, fit us in. So they fit us in right at the end of the day, which was like 6 p.m. And by then, I think there was only one person left in the room, and then our entourage. But I can't express enough that when I was on that ferry, I wasn't just saying to myself I wanted to quit. I actually wanted to pack it in. And then in the next 5 minutes, I somehow made the choice, just don't do it, just fight. And then we got some good video of that performance, so at least it showed we played the festival. We played it, just to a lot less people. And so when that succeeded, even my brother's girlfriend at the time, who we had known since high school, said, Dean, oh, that's my real name, used to be really emotional, and you'd hyper react to things when you were younger, and during all that you kept your cool and you didn't give up and you made it happen. And she was like, I'm impressed. I'm like, huh, maybe I am too. Maybe that just tells me about how I move through life, from now on. And we did the show, and we spent a day in Seattle, and the next day, and it was great, and it was sunny, and it was wonderful. And I didn't quit.
You're still here.
If you quit, we wouldn't be talking right now.
How profound that really is, because, like you mentioned, the success in this community, that means everything to me on two levels. One, I can't remember who said it, but someone big said it, that art is dead if it doesn't have a community. Like, if it's not functioning, if it's not something, if there's fire gathered around it, it's not art. It's not doing anything for anyone. And so to have the fandom community embrace it, all of a sudden made my dreams come true of, oh my God, this is better than fame. This is better than even a career. This is like having my art function in people's lives. Like when I was played the RFR bash in Anaheim, and then the next day I had people coming up to me that I didn't know who knew me, which was really weird. And I was really grateful for it. And they would say, because I'd never experienced that, and they would say, like, your music is the soundtrack of my fandom. So it was like, okay,
That's
that
incredible.
makes me happy. I could die now. Yeah, I could die now knowing that my art existed in community for real for this point in time. Like, whether it continues or not, it doesn't matter. It happened. And now it's actually still happening, so cool. Everyone at the RFR Bash sang the chorus of the song,
Amazing.
which I didn't know was going to happen. And that is what? Now, that was 2015. So that was 15 years after the band started.
I want to go into the RFR because that's from what I saw. That was my introduction to you. My introduction to you through the fandom was your song, the RFR song. What obviously inspiration for that song obviously came from RFR, which is Rebel Force Radio. But talk a little bit about that track and how you got it into the community, and then a little bit more about that bash and the experience at that bash. Was that in Florida or Anaheim?
Anaheim, 2015 celebration. Anaheim. Sure, I'd love to tell that story. Thanks for asking. I was the guy that was writing in to that show when it was the Force Cast, even before Jimmy joined, when it was Jason and Pete, and so I was just always a true fan and just passionately writing in all the time. And what I loved about that was my first experience in life, which was like a true like radio host and radio fans kind of relationship, which I've later found out was a thing. You start to feel like these voices are part of your family as you bring them into your home every week. And then you write to them and they sometimes respond to you, and then you really do kind of feel like a family. And so that went on for years and years and years. And then sometimes I'd find my musings on stuff about the Force or spirituality or whatever, post it on their website. And then at one point Jimmy noticed I was a musician, said, hey, why don't you submit a jingle? And then I said to him, I can't really submit a jingle right away. I can't just whip something up because I've never been able to do that. The only thing that works for me is to make art that really means something, and I don't know when that'll happen with you, but it's going to happen because I feel it. I don't know what it is. Like, I didn't hear the song right away. It was a big blur. I had this feeling of I wanted to write a story about them. And then about 3/4 of a year later, I'm reading Joseph Campbell again and studying all this stuff, and then watching a documentary and George Lucas going, and then I rewrote Star Wars with the hero's journey. And I had this song called First Light, which I realized was kind of Star Wars-y. And then I looked at it and I was like, wait, why don't I... And that was going to be a song on Sand in the Sun at the time. We were developing it. Like 2012, 13, 14. And it just hit me. Well, why don't I just do what George did? Why don't I just rewrite that song with the hero's journey and write it about RFR because those guys will actually one of an audience. They had up to 100,000 or 200,000 listeners a month at the time. I don't know what it is now, but a big audience, 20,000 a week or whatever that is. And okay, I'll try that as an experiment. Like George Lucas said, I'm going to try this as an experiment and see if it works. Fine, let's see if this works. So I sat down, I rewrote the song, First Light, to be a hero's journey song about RFR, Jimmy and Jason, their journey in starting their own thing. I really looked at the universal steps of Campbell, and it was hard because I guess in a 2-hour movie you have a lot of time to actually really look at those steps. So it was a bit hard being terse enough in 12 lines of lyrics. But it worked. I mean it worked technically. It put it together. My bandmates kind of thought I was a little nuts because, as you know, you are a Star Wars fanatic. And when you're around people like your family or other social situations, people kind of view you as the crazy guy who's always talking Star Wars. Like, do you get that?
No, because I'm sane, Din. I'm a sane individual. Yeah, absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about. I wanted to ask you about your bandmates because you have Rebel Force Radio, obviously, which is zeroed in on Rebel Force Radio, but you also have Rebel Girl. So I really wanted to know what your bandmates think of all of these when you come up to them and you say, "Hey, I'm gonna do a Star Wars song," and like, do they give you, like you just said, they kind of look at you cross-eyed, but do they say why or no or give us a reason? Do you have to convince them at all, or do they just follow you through thick and thin?
Oh, I guess it looks like that. But any real band, any real band in collaboration is not like that, as you know from making movies. It's messy. And Community is messy. Community is the hardest, messiest thing, but it's the most worthwhile thing because, of what you accomplish together with people in life or in business or in art. And no, our drummer was at the point of just like stop talking about, because 3 or the 4 of us would talk about Star Wars on tour, and it was just like I was looked at as the worst because I was always instigating it, and it was like to the point of bandmates getting mad at me, like if I pushed too much on stage, like sometimes I would use Star Wars props, a monk's, Jedi robe or a Vader mask, and it actually could anger the drummer, Austin, who drummed with us for a long time. He's on the great drummer on the Sand in the Sun LP. He would get mad about how much I would bring Star Wars into our music, and there was a line sometimes with him. So with Rebel Force Radio, 2 of the members thought. Like Mark actually saw the wisdom. He's like, you might be onto something there. Adam, not so much. He might have just thought, well, a lot of the stuff didn't try his work, so let's see how this goes. But it is getting pretty crazy now that it's actually entering our music. And at the time, we were going to be on the Sand in the Sun record was going to be on a label called Heading North. And the label owner actually was upset at me for the change and said I was selling out.
Really?
We didn't end up releasing on that label. That would probably be one of the reasons. Because it was also costing him money. Because I had to go back to the studio and do the lyrics. And we had to remix the song. It was already mixed. And it was a late change. And I had to say to them, look, I'm not selling out. I love Star Wars more than anything. I love mythology behind it. I love the art of it. Like, I think I'm clicking onto something artistically here that I've been searching for my whole life. This is not selling out.
See, I'm curious about the selling out too, because it's because of the Rebel Force Radio. I was curious about the selling out because it feels like a genius move on your part. You're like, hey, there's this community. We can infiltrate that. We can infiltrate 100,000 ears this month if we do this song about this. And it's brilliant. But then you took that and then you said, but I'm not doing it until I feel comfortable with it, confident with it, and I'm telling the story that I feel is necessary to tell for this particular track.
Yeah, and I was a nobody. So I'm sure Jimmy thought, oh, man, who's this guy? I must have sounded, he's got a one-word name. No one knows who he is, and he can't do it for us yet because he has to make some real art. Yeah, man. I would, totally, I would totally be understanding if Jimmy was thinking that when I said that. But, then when he heard the song, he was like, dude, this is awesome. I cannot wait to play this. And then, of course, they played it every week for years and years and years. And, yeah, selling out. That was hard. Yeah, no, man, that was a deal breaker. That was one of the deal breakers for that label. Huh.
The label not only came to an end, but so did the Souls, and then you formed a new band, F-105. When did that all go down, and why did that go down? Why get rid of the Souls and move on to F-105?
Well, the short answer is I just felt that was the truest thing to do to me, to who I was. Of course, at that point, I had obviously bandmates and people who were very upset for that. But something that I've learned in life is that betrayal of another at the expense of betraying yourself, not betraying another at the expense of betraying who you truly are, is the worst betrayal. Because then you can't serve anyone, and you're unhappy, and you're bitter, and you're not functioning, and you can't be good to anyone. So that was me realizing that. Basically what happened in that whole 3 or 4 years leading up to Sand in the Sun and working out, like that album came out late because we were trying all the songs in many different styles. So we were trying them, and we had folk versions, we had electronic versions. The 5 electronic recordings that I liked, of which Rebel Force Radio was one, F-35 another, song Emergency. 5 of these I was listening to at the gym one day in 2014, and I realized, oh my God, these are really good. These are motivating me to actually jog for 20 minutes. And jogging is horrific, but it's getting me through this. Maybe if I release these are experimental versions, electronic versions that are like alternate versions of the songs that we're really doing for the album. That what I'm trying to say is I got the idea to release the experimental electronic versions of songs, which were B versions, on an EP called the Anotos Cathotos EP before the A versions came out on the Sand in the Sun record. Because we were making those at the same time. So release that EP, and then someone who had subscribed to our email list said, I'm going to put these on the radio. So she put RFR and Emergency on Sirius Radio in 2014, and those have been playing every day since. And so I've been starting to get, decent checks to live off for that, and the co-writers, the bandmates. So yeah, maybe I did sell out, and thank God, because making money for your principled art that you think is your true art without compromise, what could be better than that? So then Sand in the Sun came out with the A versions, and how we imagined them, how I started imagining them in 2001. And once that album came out and we toured it, and I was by no, as you know, from making movies, they take everything out of you. Every album takes a couple of years, and the creation of it, and then the execution and the relationship dynamics, because it's a marriage, not with one person, but it's a marriage with a few. You really get worn out. And after that last album, I actually just knew I couldn't make another album with the Souls. And I couldn't go on tour again. I just knew I never would be able to again. And that, not only that, I felt peace and happiness and was grateful for having completed that journey, like having got to that album that was in my head in 2001.
It was a 15-year journey that came to an end, so to speak. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is kind of cool. It was hard at the time. It was heartbreaking. It was like a big breakup. Because the people, Adam and Austin, especially Adam and Mark, that have been playing in the Souls, that was that version of the Souls. That was like 5 years.
Wow.
Under stars, on the road, there's no cars, just the shore, wail a wind, crack a stone, as the moon light glows, where is home? Falling clouds, rising smoke. Do you remember this land before it was broke?
Let's talk about the new album. The Souls were done. You're like, okay, I said everything I can say through the Souls. F-105. First, this is one question you get all the time. So why don't you just, right up front, just give me the answer. I know the answer, but why don't you just give me the answer, give everybody listening the answer. Why the name F-105?
Okay, so before I do, I'm just going to say that I know I've been running on with long answers. I am going to make them as succinct as possible, like lyrics. So, because you said we're running out of time. The album idea that excited me, the new project idea, was I'm going to make something that continues with the hero's journey, pop culture, mythological, reinventing myth stuff, but I'm also going to add more Canadian storytelling and myth making because, like the bands like the Tragically Hip or Neil Young or Bruce Cockburn, I want to speak about where I'm from too. Not just the global mythology stuff, but this local place. So looking for a Canadian symbol, I found the Avro Arrow, the legendary Canadian jet from the 50s, which my dad always told me about when I was young because he's a pilot, and how the government that took charge after the former one that created the Avro Arrow was bitter, so they ended the program and we lost all our Canadian talent in space and aeronautics to the States, and they went on to do NASA and build things like the space shuttles and the F-16, and we lost Canadian talent. And so the Avro Arrow is a symbol of legendary archetypal Canadian proportions. But the name Avro Arrow, which I wanted to use for the band Avro's Arrow, was apparently copyrighted by Dan Aykroyd, who was a big fan of it and did a CBC movie about it.
And he was
So,
in the Heritage Moments
one-
ad on TV as well, if you remember from like 20 years ago.
Yeah, that stuff. So to make this long story short, talking to Paul Bateman about the cover, because I chose a few images, so he advised me, the brilliant artist Paul Bateman advised me on which image to choose, and then he said, well, it was by text, so it really wasn't in this voice. I'll do the voice anyway. Why don't you try looking up alternate names or nicknames for it? So I was like, that's a genius idea. And then I found it was called the CF-105. And then I thought to myself, F-105 sounds better because the F rhymes with the 5, the F sounds. And also, hey, wait a second. We only put the C in front of, like, if this jet was staying in production, was exported to the world, people would have bought it as the F-105. You would not put the C in.
True.
You know, like we call the F-18 the CF-18. So it was kind of like a statement. I liked the way it sounded, and then a statement like, okay, we're going to try to export this music. And it just so happens, I might add, that the global fan community, and mostly Americans and people from United Kingdom, have supported our music while Canada hasn't. So I think it's an appropriate name.
It's a
We're
great
exported.
I really like the name. I think it's a great name. Like you said, it does focus on the hero's journey. You have a lot of the Desert Planet. I think other than Rebel Girl was the first song I heard from this album, but the next one you sent me was Desert Planet, which I think is No, I think it's a tremendous song. I actually really enjoy that song. And when you first sent it to me, I listened to it on repeat for a while, driving in my car. But I got one question for you, because they're all titles of basically something, but one of them is called October 1st.
Born to sing, ground to the sky. Was born to sing, to shine like the sun. God only my voice. Was born to sing, ground to the sky. Was born to sing, to shine like the sun. God only my voice.
The song is so in this song, I'm really taking the hero's journey and making it personal. So I feel like I came to this. I'm going to sound weird and really flighty. I truly think there's no such thing as time. We're just energy that changes form. I'm going to get hippy dippy, but I truly feel like I chose to come to this planet and this place just to sing. You know? Has nothing to do with any other want, like fame or career or anything. I just love to sing. And so the chorus is, I was born to sing, from the ground to the sky. I'm not singing it. And when I'm gone, I'll leave my voice. So just my hero's journey is really me going through a lot of years of my life denying that that's what I came here to do, and then remembering that that's what I love the most, deciding to follow my bliss. And so just little self-indulgently taking a moment on the album to write the hero's journey song, maybe for myself, and but written in a way anyone could become the I in that song, because actually I try to use we and you pronouns more than I, because I want my music to be a little more community embracing. So I was born to sing. And then October 1st is my birthday.
Ah, happy birthday.
It just sounds cool, October 1st. So you always want a song title that sounds cool. And then also, I just love the word October in art.
Yeah.
You know, you've got movies with the word October, Red October. You know, you have the revolution in Russia, which was in October. You have the U2 album, October. I don't know, something about October in art.
Let's talk a little bit about Rebel Girl. You had success with Rebel Force Radio, so you decided to do Rebel Girl. But Rebel Girl was not originally about rebels or a girl. Well, it was about a girl, but not maybe a rebellious girl, but not one in the Star Wars universe. One in the city of Toronto, which laid true to what you were just saying about wanting to write songs about where you were from. So why the change from Toronto to a galaxy you've never been to before?
Right. So that was one of the songs on the album where I was trying to focus on some Canadian storytelling, and you know, my love of, you know, a song like LA Woman by the Doors. I always wanted to write a love song for Toronto. Like LA Woman sounds like Jim Morrison is singing about a woman in LA, but really he's singing about LA, and just using that as a metaphor. And I even, you know, in 2016 toured out west for 2 months workshopping that song and on over 20 dates, which ended with a show in Orlando where I played it still as Toronto Girl. And but then when I got back from Orlando, there was all this stuff going on in fandom with you know, women being attacked ever since, you know, Ray came on the scene, and now Jin. And I realized, as to go back to sort of that lesson that my uncle had taught me way back, that, you know, it's time to listen. And instead of doing the song I want to do, which is Toronto Girl, I want to be the guy that writes the Toronto song like the Doors did. Just give up on that, what my ego was telling me to do, and just go, this community, maybe a song for them. So the lyrics are from the perspective of saying, it's your time for breaking through, and that's cool. That's it. We're cool with that. We dig that, man. Or not to use the word man, but um, and then just put it out there and see how it goes, and that really caught on. And what was amazing about that was, and I should say that I still feel a level of uncomfort with that song
Really?
because I am a white dude singing about an issue that's important to women. I mean, ultimately, I think we need the female. I'm looking forward to the female singer who's going to break through in fandom, or stuff like the Looking for Leia documentary, made by Dr. Ophelian, which is being made by her. I want to hear the female voices, but for what it's worth, it's a song saying, hey, I know I'm a guy, and I'm just saying from my guy perspective, this female through in genre films, and it's really awesome. Because not only from a politically diverse standpoint, which is great, from an artistic standpoint, I think it's effing great to see different characters. Something different. Like having Rey, having Jin, just gives us different art that's just artistically more representative of the real world. And life is art, So
Absolutely.
I'm going on about this because it's something I don't really hear anyone ever talk about. How it's great for politics, how it's great for the community, how it's great on all those things, and it is so great for all that. But what it's also great for is the art. We're getting new art by having them being daring enough to put females in the lead.
Everyone wants to focus on the politics of it all, and sometimes it's just as simple as the art of it all. And maybe that, if we focused on the art being the important aspect of it, maybe we wouldn't have all these loudmouth haters ruining the Star Wars fandom at the very moment.
Well, they're not ruining it. First of all, this is a misconception. This was something that I think Kathleen Kennedy, when she decided to do what she was going to do with Star Wars, that I think she knew was going to happen. And they could never ruin our Star Wars.
I agree with you. How could she not know this was going to happen when George Lucas made 3 movies in the 90s and early 2000s where all people did was hate on them?
Yeah, it actually doesn't ruin the movies or the fandom. It really makes it. I have to choose my words right here because I don't want them to be misunderstood. Let me say it this way, and it's something that I actually have been thinking about very strongly over the last couple of days. It's as simple as this. The people who control the world know one thing, and they've known one thing through all of time, which is if you control how people think, you control how they act. The one way to get people to think, the one true way that has always existed to control people's actions through their thoughts, through what they believe in, is through mythology. Mythology has always been made by the people who want to affect the community, whether it's a small community or whether now it's the world. All religions, all myths, Greek, whatever, all the people at the top, the smartest, whatever you want to call them, the most powerful, the elite, they know this. Sometimes for our benefit, sometimes for our detriment. For instance, not having native stories told in young education. You control that myth. If you could control the psyche of Canadian youth, that we never did what we did, which was a genocide to Native people, we sell them kids a myth that says we did a fur trade and everything's rosy. That's mythology, man. We're controlling people. So this is heavy, and I'm really passionate. I'm really thankful. I really want to start talking about this more and more. When someone like George Lucas makes Star Wars, he did it. We could go to a ton of interviews where he says, "I made this because these are the values I wanted to instill in youth." End of story, man. He wanted us to care about democracy and spirituality, community, friendship, like all those things. He knew that if this worked, he would be influencing young minds, and it worked. And consciously, he led Lucasfilm through decades of doing that on purpose. Like, that's why he even made a decision like Han not shooting first. Whether you agree with the decision or not, what you can't disagree with what I'm saying is someone like Lucas, who knows they're controlling a global mythology, knows that they're controlling people through the thoughts that they think. And if they have that power, how do they use it for the betterment, true betterment of people? And when someone like Kathleen Kennedy takes that over, she knows she now has that power. Clearly, unequivocally, and with utter, probably trepidation about it. So now we have this. She has this global audience. What does she say she's going to do? I'm going to make it more inclusive. I'm going to make it more diverse in terms of culture and gender. She said she was going to do that, and she did it. And she did it because she knows that that's what mythology has always done. No one has ever created or been involved with mythology who hasn't known that it's a way to change the way people think. And of course, when you change the way people think, the people who don't want to change, they're going to get mad and they're going to react against it. But there's nothing new happening here. They could get mad at Kathleen Kennedy, but it's nothing different than what George Lucas did.
Not at all.
You know,
I
putting
completely agree.
Leia, he's making Leia the princess who doesn't have to be saved, who saves the guys. Like, nothing's different is going on here. We're talking about someone who knows they have the power and the control, but now how are they going to use that in a good way for humanity, or the community is a better word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really passionate about that. Thanks for letting me go on.
Way back when, before it began, you gave us something that would never end. You painted us a beautiful lie. Everything that we need to get by. I couldn't wait to tell all my friends a new sound that was heaven sent. Got everyone tickets for the final show. You said you'll go to, like everyone you know. I wish I could help you. I wish I could know you, give you some courage to.
Before we wrap it up, we got to get to your final track. It's a bonus track on the F-105 debut album, Courage 2 for Gord Downing. Talk a little bit about that and go into maybe a little bit about how you got into music through Gord Downing and the Tragically Hip.
Wow, you're just really asking all. I'm so thankful for this podcast because I've always everything we've talked about, and to tell this story, and just to finally say it's okay for me to just take up someone's time to talk about my story for once. Just this one time is great. In 1989, none of the music on the radio was speaking to me. You know, it was like Bryan Adams, overproduced Bryan Adams, Def Leppard stuff. And hey, there's great stuff in there. I like some Def Leppard songs, but none spoke to my life. I'm watching Much Music one day, and I liked music all my life, by the way. Like, I got into music because my dad's Beatles music and good oldies And I'd listen on stereo headphones when I was 2. There's a picture of me I have on my wall, which I'm enamored by stereo production at 2 years old in headphones. I would sing to imaginary stadium-sized concerts in my bedroom, joy to the world. As a kid, I knew that the real point of music was to make community enjoy. We get to 1989, and I see a hip video come on Much Music, the song Blow It High Dough, and it was a bunch of guys who looked really dirty and not overpolished like Warrant and Whitney Houston and all the other stuff that was just over, all the overproduced 80s stuff. You know, I don't mean to knock any of them. I love some Whitney Houston songs, or like, you know what I'm trying to talk. You know that era. Yeah, the overproduced, the over expensive suits, the over expensive videos, nothing spoke to me. And then before grunge, before Nirvana in 1991, you had this band called the Tragically Hip. And I saw the video, and I saw that they were touring after the video, and they were playing in Toronto. I asked my older brother to take me. I was 15. And that night, went with my best friend at the time, John Dawson, who was the one who taught me how to play guitar. And watching the Hip and Gord Downie that night, I knew, oh my God, right, this is what I want to do with my life. I am going to be a singer for the rest of my life, like Gord. Said that word for word.
Did you even know you could sing?
And no idea.
Well, thank God that worked out for you.
I was going to learn how to sing. Unfortunately, it took one high music industry person years later saying, "You have great songs, but you're singing really horribly. You got to take lessons." And then I took opera lessons for 3 years and found out that I actually could sing with some application. But so that the Hip became one of my favorite bands. Gord, one of my biggest influences. And when he passed away a couple years ago, or it was last year now, but the news that he had terminal brain cancer obviously affected us all here in Canada. And there was one moment where I realized all my life I had wanted to meet him, sort of from an egotistical view of like meeting your hero and wanting something from them, like their time, like acknowledgement of me, or even my music. I always sort of imagined, giving them a CD or opening for them. And I realized how egotistical and selfish that was. And then at some point when I was crying in HMV before it closed on Yonge Street, I just realized it was like, wow, now I just wish I could help the guy or his family. Like, it just sucks. Like, there's just no way around that. It sucks. And, that sentiment turned into a song, so I wish I could help you and give you some courage too, because there's song Courage and then the song Grace too. It's kind of a play on those two songs. James, thanks for asking about that and all these important things.
Of course, thanks for coming on the Fine Piece podcast, the resurgence of the Fine Piece podcast. It's the first one back since October 2017. You are going on a world tour with F-105. You can listen to the Rebel Girls, the Desert Planets, the Last Moments. You can even have some Courage too if you want. Tell everybody about that tour.
Okay, so the tour, which I would call the first leg of the F-105 First Flight World Tour, because it is going to include dates, more dates starting in the new year, like Celebration in Chicago. And more. But this first leg was London, Paris, Ontario, Toronto, which was last week, and then 9 dates in Europe, which is in 2 weeks in September. So I go from Paris to a few gigs in London, gig in Liverpool, Birmingham, England. I'm going to meet all the Fantha tracks people like Mark Newbold. His name's Carl. He's going to join me. Then a few gigs in Dublin, and then home.
And you are going to you're going to be playing in Chicago, like you said, during Star Wars Celebration 2019. Now, right before I let you go, I gotta ask you. You told me, you sent me some lyrics a little while ago to a song you were planning on having done for Star Wars Celebration Chicago 2019. Is that still in the works, or are you ex-naying that one?
Oh, I really plan to. It's really a question of whether I'll have more songs done with that song. I think right now it'd probably just be because I have a whole bunch brewing up. I always think I'm never going to record again, but then new songs hit me that I love so much. I love the art of it so much that's why I'll put myself through that process, which is grueling. So the song Celebration that I wrote, which is really to celebrate unity and fandom and everything you love about fandom. I think it's a good song that I'm gonna have to record and have ready for then. Yeah.
Can't wait to hear that one. Can't wait to see you at Star Wars Celebration Chicago. And if you want to look Din up online, what's your social media?
The handle is at F105 Music. So that's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, SoundCloud. And then our website is f105music.com. And there you can get links to all the tour dates, to where to get the album online. You can get it for free or pay what you can at the Bandcamp link. And that's the one I suggest to everyone because you can choose what file type to download. So you can go through lame MP3s, if that's your thing. No judgment. They're just kind of lame in quality. Or you can go for FLAC or master files, which are no degradation from the studio. So those are even better than CD. They're like vinyl level. And the lyric sheet comes with that. Or you can get it on Apple, iTunes, or Spotify through our webpage.
Awesome. So everyone make sure you check that out. Din, thanks once again for being on the Fine Piece podcast.
Thanks for having me. Again, I've just been going full tilt through this story since 2001 and never really gotten a chance to sit back and reflect on it. And this was a great way to do that, and to do it with enthusiastic host asking such great questions was really a delight, the best way to do this. So thanks, man.
Well, thank you. We'll do this again in 17 more years. So you can go back and reflect on these next 17 years.
So listen up, son. Listen up, girl. You gotta live each moment. Live each moment like it's your last on earth. Like it's your last on earth. Oh my God, what would happen if that was our last moment? Oh my God, what would happen if that was our last moment?
That was my conversation with Din of F-105, and this was the first episode of the second season of the Fine Piece podcast. You can follow Din and F-105 at F-105 Music. That is on every social media platform. It's at F-105 Music. And also go to their website, f105music.com, to discover all their tour dates and where you can get a copy of their latest album. Thanks again to Din for joining me and telling his story. If you or someone you know would be a good fit on the Fine Piece podcast, please send us an email to thefinepiece@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please give us a rating and a review. It really, really helps us out. Until next time, I'm James Razile, and may you be the master of your own universe.